The journey begins. The biting Himalayan wind whipped around Inspector Rudra Sharma, tugging at his worn leather jacket. Above, the jagged peaks clawed at a bruised twilight sky, their snow-capped summits fading into an ominous gray. Below, the narrow, treacherous path clung precariously to the mountainside, each step a gamble in the dwindling light. His breath plumed white in the frigid air, a stark contrast to the simmering unease churning in his gut. He wasn't supposed to be here. His jurisdiction was the dusty plains of Uttar Pradesh, not these desolate, godforsaken heights. But the frantic call from the isolated village of Rudraprayag had been unlike anything he'd ever heard, a primal scream of terror laced with ancient superstition. They spoke of a malevolent spirit, a possessed woman, and Aghoris, the enigmatic, often feared ascetics known for their unorthodox rituals. Encounter with Bhairav. The village elder, a wizened man named Bhairav, had met him at the foot of the mountain, his eyes wide with a fear that seemed to have aged him decades in a single night. "Inspector Sahib," he rasped, his voice trembling. "It is Chandramukhi. The moon has turned her wicked. Chandramukhi." Even the name sent a shiver down Rudra's spine. She was the village beauty, known for her gentle nature and radiant smile. Now, they said, her eyes glowed with an unnatural light, her voice a guttural snarl, and her strength defied human limits. They claimed she was possessed by a vengeful spirit, one awakened by an ancient relic unearthed during the recent landslides. Bhairav had also spoken of the Aghoris, a reclusive sect dwelling in the higher reaches, their practices shrouded in secrecy and often misinterpreted as macabre. He believed they were the only ones who could help, their mastery over the spiritual realm, their only hope. Rudra, a man of logic and reason, struggled to reconcile these tales with the reality he knew. Possession, spirits, Aghoris. It all sounded like folklore, the product of fear and isolation. Yet the sheer desperation in Bhairav's voice, the palpable terror that hung heavy in the village air, had compelled him to make this arduous journey. Arrival at the silent village. He finally reached the cluster of stone houses, huddled together against the unforgiving landscape. The village was eerily silent, the only sound the mournful howl of the wind. Fear had locked the inhabitants behind their doors, their faces peering out from behind cracked shutters, their eyes reflecting a mixture of dread and a sliver of desperate hope at his arrival. Inside the temple, Bhairav led him to the village temple, a small, ancient structure carved into the rock face. The air inside was thick, with the scent of incense and a cloying, metallic odor that made Rudra's nostrils flare. In the center of the dimly lit chamber, Chandramukhi was bound to a stone pillar. The sight of Chandramukhi, the sight of her sent a jolt of icy fear through him. The woman he saw bore little resemblance to the gentle soul Bhairav had described. Her eyes, wide and bloodshot, held a terrifying intelligence, a malevolent gleam that seemed to pierce through him. Her body writhed against the ropes, her guttural growls punctuated by chilling laughter that echoed off the stone walls. Her once beautiful face was contorted in a mask of pure hatred. "The relic and the warning. The relic, it changed her," Bhairav whispered, pointing to a small, intricately carved stone idol lying on the floor nearby. It depicted a fierce, multi-armed deity, its eyes hollow and strangely unsettling. Rudra approached cautiously. As he drew closer, Chandramukhi's head snapped towards him, her gaze locking onto his. A voice, not her own, rasped from her throat, sending shivers down his spine. You cannot stop us." Days and nights of terror. He tried to speak, to reason, but the words caught in his throat. This was beyond anything he had encountered. He had dealt with criminals, murderers, and thieves. But this felt ancient, primal. Days turned into nights, each more terrifying than the last. Chandramukhi's condition worsened. Her physical strength increased. The demonic voice grew louder and more menacing. And strange occurrences plagued the village. Doors would slam shut on their own. Shadows danced in the periphery, and a bone-chilling cold permeated the air, even when the meager fire burned high. Rudra tried everything. Logic, persuasion, even threats. But nothing worked. The village doctor, a nervous young man, could find no physical ailment. Chandramukhi's vitals were strong, yet her behavior was undeniably unnatural. The plea for the Aghoris, desperate, Bhairav finally convinced Rudra to seek the help of the Aghoris. He spoke of their deep understanding of the spiritual realm, their ability to confront forces beyond human comprehension. Rudra, a skeptic by nature, had nowhere else to turn. Journey to the Aghoris' dwelling. Under the pale light of the moon, Bhairav led him higher into the mountains, towards the rumored dwelling place of the Aghoris. The path grew steeper, the air thinner, and the silence more profound. broken only by the crunch of their boots on the frozen ground. Arrival at the cave. They reached a small cave, its entrance shrouded by thick, gnarled trees. A faint glow emanated from within, accompanied by the low, rhythmic chanting that seemed to vibrate through the very rock. Encounter with the Aghoris. Hesitantly, Bhairav stepped forward. "Om Namah Shivaya," he called out, his voice trembling slightly. The chanting stopped. After a moment of tense silence, a figure emerged from the darkness. He was tall and gaunt, his body smeared with ash, his long matted hair piled high on his head. His eyes, though piercing, held a strange calmness. This was an Aghori. More figures emerged, their faces obscured by ash and shadow. They carried trishuls and human skull bowls, their presence both intimidating and strangely serene. Bhairav prostrated himself before them, his voice filled with pleading. He narrated Chandramukhi's plight, the terror gripping their village, and their desperate hope for salvation. The lead Aghori listened intently, his gaze unwavering. When Bhairav finished, he spoke, his voice a low, resonant rumble. "The spirit is strong. The relic has opened a doorway. It will not be easily banished." Rudra, despite his skepticism, felt a flicker of hope. These men, with their unsettling appearance and arcane practices, seemed to possess an understanding of the darkness that had engulfed Chandramukhi. The rituals in the cave. For the next 3 days, the Aghoris performed their rituals. The cave echoed with their chanting, the air thick with the scent of burning herbs and pungent smoke. Rudra watched, a mixture of fascination and apprehension swirling within him. He saw things he couldn't explain. Flickering lights, whispers on the wind, and a palpable shift in the atmosphere. Returned to the village. They finally descended back to the village on the 4th night, the Aghoris leading the way. The villagers, who had been living in a state of terrified anticipation, watched their arrival with bated breath. Confrontation in the temple. The Aghoris entered the temple, their presence filling the small space. Chandramukhi, sensing their arrival, thrashed violently against her bonds, her demonic voice reaching a fever pitch. The Aghori's approach. The lead Aghori approached her, his eyes fixed on hers. He held a skull bowl filled with a dark liquid and began to chant, his voice rising and falling in an ancient rhythm. The other Aghoris joined in, their voices creating a powerful resonant hum that seemed to shake the very foundations of the temple. Escalating terror, the air grew heavy, the shadows danced more frantically, and Chandramukhi's screams intensified. Rudra felt a cold dread grip his heart. Was this just madness, a theatrical display, or was there something more, something truly terrifying at play? The vortex and the liquid. Suddenly, Chandramukhi's body arched violently, and a guttural roar ripped from her throat. A dark, swirling vortex seemed to materialize around her, and the temperature in the temple plummeted. Fear choked Rudra, but he stood his ground, his eyes fixed on the unfolding horror. The lead Aghori raised the skull bowl and flung the dark liquid onto Chandramukhi's face. A searing hiss filled the air, and a black, vaporous form writhed and recoiled from her body. The demonic voice shrieked in agony as the vaporous entity struggled against the Aghoris' chanting. The battle and the rudraksha mala. The battle raged for what felt like an eternity. The Aghoris chanted relentlessly, their faces grim, their bodies trembling with exertion. The dark vortex around Chandramukhi pulsed and throbbed, threatening to consume everything in its path. Rudra watched, his mind reeling. He was witnessing something beyond the realm of human understanding, a confrontation between the mortal and the spectral. Just when it seemed the darkness would prevail, the lead Aghori produced a small, intricately carved rudraksha mala. He held it aloft, and a faint golden light emanated from it, pushing back against the encroaching shadows. His chanting reached a crescendo, and he flung the mala around Chandramukhi's neck. A blinding flash of white light erupted, engulfing the temple. The demonic shriek reached a deafening pitch and then abruptly ceased. The dark vortex vanished, and the oppressive cold lifted. The aftermath and Chandramukhi's recovery. When the light subsided, Chandramukhi lay still, her body limp. The Aghoris stopped chanting, their faces etched with exhaustion but their eyes filled with a quiet triumph. Rudra rushed to Chandramukhi's side. Her breathing was shallow but steady. The malevolent gleam in her eyes was gone, replaced by a peaceful serenity. Slowly, her eyelids fluttered open. She looked at Rudra, her eyes filled with confusion and a hint of fear. Who are you?" she whispered, her voice weak but her own. A wave of relief washed over Rudra, so profound it almost brought him to his knees. It was over. The darkness had been vanquished. The lead Aghori approached, his gaze gentle. "The spirit is gone, child. You are free." Chandramukhi looked at him, tears welling up in her eyes. I don't remember anything." The Aghoris explained that the ancient relic had acted as a conduit, awakening a malevolent spirit that had latched onto her. Their rituals, combined with the power of the sacred rudraksha, had severed the connection and banished the entity. Dawn and peace. As dawn broke over the majestic Himalayas, casting a golden glow on the snow-capped peaks, a sense of peace settled over Rudraprayag. Chandramukhi, though weak, was recovering. The fear that had gripped the village had begun to dissipate, replaced by a quiet gratitude. Rudra's reflection. Rudra stood outside the temple, watching the villagers slowly emerge from their homes, their faces etched with relief. He still couldn't fully comprehend what he had witnessed. His logical mind struggled to reconcile the supernatural events with his understanding of the world. The lead Aghori approached him. "Inspector Sahib," he said, his voice calm, "some things lie beyond the realm of human reason. There are forces in this world that cannot be explained by logic alone." Rudra looked at him, a newfound respect in his eyes. He had come here a skeptic, a man of science. He was leaving with a profound sense of the unknown, a humbling realization that the world held mysteries far deeper and darker than he had ever imagined. The parting gift. As he prepared to leave Rudraprayag, Bhairav pressed a small, intricately carved wooden amulet into his hand. "For protection, Inspector Sahib," he said, his eyes filled with gratitude. "You faced the darkness with courage." Rudra accepted the amulet, a silent acknowledgement of the terrifying ordeal he had endured. He knew he would never look at the world the same way again. The encounter with Chandramukhi and the Aghoris had shattered his preconceived notions, leaving him with a chilling understanding of the unseen forces that lurked beneath the surface of reality. The final look and departure. He turned to take one last look at the village nestled amidst the towering mountains, a place where ancient beliefs and terrifying realities intertwined. The wind still whispered through the peaks, but now it carried a different tune, a melody of survival, of a community that had stared into the abyss and found its way back to the light. As Rudra began his long journey back to the plains, the image of Chandramukhi's possessed eyes flashed in his mind, followed by the serene look on her face after the Aghoris' intervention. He knew this was a story he would never forget, a dark encounter that had led to a miraculous end, forever etched in the annals of his memory.